Okay, now let's look at our atomic model timeline project.
Alchemist was person who studied alchemy. Alchemy is an ancient study in mystery and secrecy. It was rooted in a complex worldview in which everything around us contains a sort of universal spirit. They also believed metals were not to be alive, but also to grow inside us. Democritus. Around 460 BC, a Greek philosopher Democritus, who first developed the idea of an atom. He was wondering if a piece of matter is broken in half and then in half and then in half again. How many breaks will have to be made before it can be broken no further? He called basic elements atoms, and he believed atoms is both indivisible and indestructible. Aristotle, 300 BC. Aristotle declares the existence of only four elements: fire, air, water, and earth. All matter is made up of those four elements, and matter had four properties: hot, cold, dry, and wet. John Dalton, 1803. The modern process of studying atoms began with an English chemist and schoolteacher, John Dalton. By using experimental methods, Dalton furthered the process of Democritus's idea on atom into a scientific theory. Elements are composed of tiny indivisible particles called atoms. Besides, atoms of the same elements are identical. The atoms of any one element are different from those of any other element. He also demonstrated that atoms can physically mix together, all can chemically combine. He created the first atom model called solid sphere model. Henry Becquerel, 1896. He was a nuclear physicist, born in France. He researched the newly discovered X-rays and led to study of how uranium salts are influenced by light. He discovered that the uranium salts spontaneously emitted a penetrating plate. He had discovered a new phenomenon, radioactivity. Marie Curie, 1898. She was a famous scientist from Poland, successfully made a systematic investigation of the mysterious uranium rays with the help of her husband. Ernest Rutherford, 1898. In 1911, Ernest Rutherford, a world-famous scientist from New Zealand, along with his co-workers decided to test what was then the current theory of atomic structure. In the experiment, a narrow beam of alpha particle was directly at a very thin sheet of gold foil. According to Thomas Pumpbolding model, the alpha particles should theoretically pass easily through the gold, with only a slight deflection due to the positive charge thought to be spread out in the gold atoms. Nevertheless, to everyone's surprise, the great majority of alpha particles pass straight through the gold atoms without deflections. Even more surprisingly, a small frictions of the particle bounced off the gold foil at very large angles. Based on those results, he proved that J. Thomas' early atomic model was wrong. Albert Einstein, 1905. He was the most famous physicist and scientist. He discovered the world-famous equation E equal to mc squared. It first explained the photoelectric effect, second offered the proof of the existence of atoms, and third introduced the theory of special relativity. Hans Geiger, 1906. He was the best known as inventor of Geiger counter to measure radiation. In 1908, Geiger introduced the first successful detector of individual alpha particles. Niels Bohr, 1922. He was a physicist. J. Thomson's student. Based on Rutherford's theory, Bohr published his own model of atomic structure in 1913. The model introduced the theory of electrons traveling in orbits around the atom's nucleus, the chemical properties of the element being largely determined by the number of electrons in the outer orbit. Erwin Schrödinger, 1930. In 1926, Erwin Schrödinger, an Australian physicist, took the Bohr's atom model one step further. Schrödinger used mathematical equations to describe the likelihood of finding an electron in a certain position. This atomic model is known as quantum mechanic model of the atom. Unlike the Bohr's model, The quantum mechanics model does not define the exact path of an electron, but rather determines the allowed energies an electron can have and how likely it is to find the electrons in various locations around the nucleus. James Chadwick, 1932. In 1932, James Chadwick could show electromagnetic radiation in the reaction. A neutral particle with the mass about of a proton was emitted. Ernst Rutherford had earlier proposed that such neutron particle might exist in nuclei. The particle was discovered and was named neutron by James Chadwick. Glenn T. Seaborg, 1951. Seaborg was another important figure in developing modern atomic theory. From 1942 to 1946, Seaborg involved in plutonium work of Manhattan Project at the University of Chicago, and he became co-discoverer of plutonium and all further transuranium elements through element 102.
Thank you.